me ask you this.
Okay.
What team seeding surprised you most? Is there any that stand out where you went, oh, man, that team's 2 seed lines better, 3 seed lines better than what the committee gave them?
You already know what I'm going to say. What am I going to say?
Texas A&M.
No. I got no issue with Texas A&M.
Oh, I do.
Okay. You know what? I'll wait on mine. Here's why my Texas A&M thing is this, because we disagree fundamentally on this and philosophically, and that's fine. And it's good. It's healthy disagreement. Don't want to just yes each other up and down for 60 minutes on a podcast. What kind of fun is that? I said this over the air tonight. I have no issue. In fact, I like the fact that there is an unofficial arbiter when it comes to non-conference scheduling in college basketball. I've said this before. I say this almost every Selection Sunday show, so I'll try and keep this short because I don't want to repeat myself. College coaches will only be forced to change by things like this. Buzz Williams had a terrible non-conference schedule, okay? He could have done better. He chose not to. And so Texas A&M proved it in league play. But, and I don't think this was done like intently maliciously, they just looked at the data and they're going to say, sorry, if you do this, just like Rutgers, sorry, if you don't have a good non-conference, then you're going to get hit. Another team that I'm going to talk about is hit just the same, but for different reasons. So that's why I have no issue with A&M. A&M's bigger problem is the fact that it got the hottest 10 seed that it could possibly face. And so in doing so, the problem is if you could have gotten it a 6 or maybe even 8, like if I'm A&M, give me Iowa, give me Auburn, give me Maryland, give me West Virginia. Don't give me Memphis or FAU. Give me Arkansas or Illinois before you give me Penn State, man. That's a tough matchup for them. But I got no issue with it. What's your gripe?
Well, as I've said many times, and I do like to repeat myself. I don't know if you've noticed. I hate non-conference strength of schedule. It is so ridiculous that is a part of the criteria, because all teams should not be scheduling non-league the same way. Gonzaga, as a perennial top 10 team, national brand that plays in the West Coast Conference, should be scheduling wildly aggressively in the non-league portion of its schedule, because you're not going to be able to get those games in your league too often. Whereas if you are, say, a middle of the pack SEC team, like Texas A&M was, Texas A&M was slightly better than middle of the pack, but definitely middle of the pack preseason expectations with SEC. You should not be scheduling aggressively, and then you're gonna have one massive challenging game after another once your league starts. You shouldn't be challenging yourself in the non-league the same way. Again, somebody like Gonzaga or Houston or Memphis, teams that are national brands that can schedule big time games, and they happen to play in not so great conferences. So I hate that that's even a part of the process, but I recognize that it is. Take it, set it over there. Texas A&M finished second in the SEC, finished second in the SEC tournament. And the only reason, or at least the main reason, they are only a 7 seed is because they did start 6-5 with losses to Wofford and Murray State. It's not just their non-league strength of schedule. It's that they were terrible against that schedule. 2 losses to sub-200 net teams, Wofford and Murray State. The Wofford loss was on December 20th. So if you ready for this? Sort the data at barttorvik.com from December 21st. That's nearly 3 months ago. Do you realize that Texas A&M, nearly 3 months ago, Texas A&M is the 8th best team in the country, according to barttorvik.com. The 8th best team in the country.
The resume takes in the whole season, my friend.
I understand that. I get it. But at some point, you have to pay attention to here's the thing. Just be consistent with how you do these things, because I'm about to explain to you how they're inconsistent. They look at your entire body of work, and they'll say, yeah, Texas A&M over the past 2.5 months has been a top 10 team in the country, finished second in a power conference behind the number 1 game, behind the number 1 overall seed. Oh, by the way, just beat the number 1 overall seed a week ago, and then played them in the championship game of the conference tournament again. But some stuff that happened 3 months ago is the reason we can't give them the seed. They so clearly, their abilities suggest, their results suggest, recent results, 2.5 months of results suggest they deserve. So they won't look at what you are right now. they'll tie in what you used to be. But let UCLA's second leading scorer get hurt. And they don't just say, well, now they're looking at what you are right now. Isn't that a difference in approaches? With Texas A&M, they're not looking at what they are right now. They're looking at, in part, what they were in November and December.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at a UCLA or a Tennessee or any team that has lost a big-time player in recent weeks, then they look at what you are right now, and they will seed you accordingly. With Rutgers,
that's fair, though.
With Rutgers, they said that part of the reason Rutgers didn't get the benefit of the doubt, didn't make the tournament, is because they lost a player 10 games ago. They're not the same team without him. So they're right there. They're not focusing on the entire body of work. They are, by their own admission, at least in part, focusing on what Rutgers is without that player. But when it comes to Texas A&M, it's like, well, you got to look at the whole picture. Let's either, and I won't even argue passionately either way. Let's either look at the entire picture or let's not look at the entire picture. And when it comes to these ways of doing things, they are inconsistent approaches.
They need to look at the entire picture. You got to make sure that a game played on November 10th means the same as a game played on March 10th. I believe that is how you. First of all, it's just better for college basketball to try and get as many good games as possible in November and December. And so, yeah, this is a function of part of that. And I will always be a believer in not having recency bias and trying to. And I think recency bias will creep in a little bit because it's hard not to with human nature and when teams are playing hot. And some of that corresponds. Penn State was able to boost up its seed because it just added to its resume and has played well and damn near pulled the rabbit out of the hat in the Big Ten title game. That being said, I don't have an issue with taking into consideration how teams are playing when they don't have a key player. The way that college basketball. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this real quick because Ken Pomeroy, to give credit where credit's due, brought this up on Twitter a few weeks ago.
He's wrong. That's okay.
And I thought it was a smart point that I had never properly made.
He's wrong, though. He's wrong. Ken's right about almost everything. He's wrong about this. Yes, go ahead.
His point is, if we're talking about the same point, that just because you lose a player doesn't mean that you should be seated any differently than you would have been if that player was available. Largely because it is not the way we do it anywhere else. For instance, right now, the Denver Nuggets in the NBA are projected to be the 1 seed in the West because they have the best record in the West. And if Nikola Jokic tears his ACL tomorrow, Denver will still be the 1 seed in the West. They won't say, well, you don't have your best player anymore, so we can't let you. It's like, you have the best record. You are the 1 seed. And we do that literally in every
That's not how it works in college basketball, though. We have 363 teams that play at all different levels with all different resources that don't play the same kind of schedules, and the schedule in the NBA is much more similar. It's much the data points that connect those teams and the way that they build out their postseasons. It's not the same exact thing. It is very much apples and oranges. And so, if you want to say that if you want to say the selection committee should not take that into account, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. But what they are doing is if teams lose players and are trying to evaluate what the selection committee is doing is it's taking an entire body of work, it's evaluating what you've done and slotting you into the bracket and trying to reward you for what you have done, but acknowledging the state of your team. I have zero issue with the fact that if a team has proven to be less effective after an injury, if it gets docked like that, because the results literally show that. It's not the same thing as the NFL. It's not the same thing as the NBA. It's not even the same thing as the conference tournaments. You're literally requiring a selection committee. None of these other sports use selection committees. The postseasons are built out by record. Some could say they're even done unfairly. Some would say go to the soccer model, go to relegation and promotion, go to the table, go to that system, because that's even better than what we do in the NBA. So I don't have an issue whatsoever with taking that into account and being a talking point. In fact, I sometimes think that gets slightly overstated. I don't have an issue with it, and it has proven out even in the past with the major ones, the Hummel, the Kenyon Martin. It doesn't happen all that often, but Rutgers, the committee chair, told me, he said Mawot Mag, he didn't name him specifically, but Mawot Mag's injury, they were worse after it, and so we docked him for it, and they didn't get in on top of what they had not done on their schedule. I don't have a problem with it.